Hey there, guitar fanatics. I am so excited about this video because I have come across a blues lick that is so perfect that I can say without batting an eye, if you take and work on the concepts in just this 1-2 bar lick, you'll have all the tools you need to play amazing blues solos for the rest of your life. Now, it's one thing to learn a lick, but I'm going to break down the ideas behind what makes this lick so good. Things like mixing major and minor tonalities, which is the sound of the blues. Seamless moves between positions with various pentatonic and triad shapes. Using triad pairs to get modal sounds. Borrowing some techniques from jazz like chromatics. And using diminished scale lines to move between chords. I'm going to show you how to make these ideas your own. Thanks for checking out the channel. If you enjoy the video, give me a like and a subscribe. I'm Charlie Long. Let's play some guitar. So that's a lick from a song by the great Robben Ford called Misdirected Blues. That song was on a CD called Mystic Mile that was released back in 1993, and I think it might be out of print now. If you don't know much about Robben, he's considered the king of jazzy blues. Robben played with George Harrison and Joni Mitchell by the time he was in his early 20s. He did a stint in Miles Davis's band, and he even laid down solos on a Kiss record in the 1980s. He's seen and done it all, and he's really a guitarist, as we say. Before we get started on this, I want to say I am a big proponent of learning licks from great players. But I think a lot of people make the mistake of just learning the lick and then moving on. And just memorizing some notes or finger patterns, well, that's not really learning. You'll get a lot more out of a lick if you break down what's going on in the lick that makes it work. And then you can take those concepts and make up unlimited licks of your own. And that is where the real learning takes place. The real development of your style and guitar voice. Now, I hope that little speech convinced you. Let's dig into this lick. Concept number one is the mixing of major and minor tonalities. And the mixing of major and minor sounds over a major chord is really what we think of when we think of a bluesy sound. Now, Robben comes right out of the gate and employs this technique in the beginning of our example lick. Now, Robben starts off the lick with the notes G, B flat, C, E flat, E, F, E, E flat, and C. Now, Misdirected Blues is in C, and the third note of a major scale is what we want to concentrate on when using this concept. Now, we're playing over a C7 chord, and it has the notes C, E, G, and B flat. And that E note is what we call the major third. Now, E is 4 frets above C. And we can very easily turn a C7 chord into a C minor 7 chord by flattening that E note. C minor 7 has the notes C, E flat, G, and B flat. And we can do the same thing in our guitar licks. So take this lick. Let's play E, G, B flat, C, D, E, D, C, B flat, and G. Now let's take that same lick, but instead of E, we're going to play E flat. It completely changes the tonality, right? But here's what great blues players do. They mix the major and minor thirds often in the same licks like this. We're going to play E flat and then E, G, B flat, C, D, E flat and then E, C, B flat, and G. And that minor third, it just kind of teases the ear enough to let you know that it doesn't quite match the major third that's in the C7 chord. But when we move on to the major third, it resolves that tension. This really is such an essential skill, and you could spend countless hours just making up licks, mixing major and minor thirds. And a lot of times you'll hear great blues players bend that minor third up toward the major third, but not quite get there. That's a hallmark of the blues. Or you could do something as simple as just playing basically repeating licks in both major and minor pentatonic. Now I could play up frets 5 and 8 on the B and E strings, and that's from C major pentatonic. I could slide up and play frets 11 and 8 on the E and B strings. So it's kind of the mirror image of the first lick. Now we're in C minor pentatonic. So I'm sure you're getting the idea now. And if we go back to that little opening lick Robben played, there's so many ways you could play and adapt it. Now the original, it's played over a fairly fast shuffle. But we could easily turn it into a lick that would sound great over a slow blues. So we could play it like this. Or we could play the lick and go up to the G note at the 15th fret and do some sort of dramatic bend. And all right, we could do this whole lesson on mixing major and minor, but I want to cover some other things, so we're off to concept number 2. Concept number 2 is basing our lines off various triad shapes and pentatonic boxes. Now, if we look at this lick as a whole, it kind of happens in 3 main spots on the neck. We start off up at the 12th fret and we play our opening run. And that quickly transitions down to the 8th fret area. And then Robben uses some chromatics to get down to the 5th fret. So what's the deal with these spots on the neck? Well, up at the 12th fret area where the lick starts, we've got both C major and a C minor triad. We can also play C major pentatonic box 3 and C minor pentatonic box 2. Dropping down to the 8th fret, again we find both a C major and a C minor triad. Also right here we've got C minor pentatonic pattern 1 and C major pentatonic pattern 1. Now dropping down to the 5th fret, we've got a C major triad here and a minor. Also C major and C minor pentatonic patterns 5. Also, we've got a B flat triad at the 6th fret and an F major triad at the 5th fret. Now Robben plays all 3 of those triads in our original lick, and he does it in such a nice, compact, efficient way. I guess the point I'm trying to make here is that you want to know your fretboard well enough to be able to make use of whatever you need to use in a given spot. For instance, all 3 of those spots on the neck, we can easily play a C minor, C major, B flat, and F triad. So you gotta learn your basic triad shapes up and down and across the fretboard. We can also easily play C major, C minor, and F major pentatonic shapes in each of these positions. All of these scales sit right on top of each other in each of our 5 pentatonic positions. Let's just take that 8th fret area. We've got C minor, obviously. That's a shape everybody knows, minor pentatonic pattern 1. But C major sits right here with it. We can also play F major without changing position. And I just can't emphasize enough the freedom that comes with knowing the fretboard well enough that you can play whatever you want to play in one area on the neck without having to jump around all the time. So I've got an extensive course on mastering pentatonic scales all over the neck. If you want to check that out, there's a link in the description below. And let's move on to concept number 3. Now, concept number 3 is using triad pairs to get a mixolydian sound. Now, at the beginning of the last measure of the original lick, Robben plays this figure. It's 2 notes of a B flat triad, some chromatics down to the G note, which is a chord tone of C major, and then an entire B flat triad before playing an E note, which is the major third of C. So check out this sound. I'm just going to alternate between C and B flat triads all the way down the fretboard. Pretty cool, right? What you're hearing and why this sounds so good is that if you play a C major and a B flat major triad together, you get 6 notes of C mixolydian mode, which is the mode that sounds so good over dominant 7 chords. And it's got a fresh kind of a sound because it's not played like a scale, it's more intervallic. So once again, I've got to reiterate how important it is to know your different triad shapes. Let's make up a few licks using the C and B flat major triad pair. So here's one to start with, and it's actually something I hear the great British blues guitarist Matt Schofield use a lot. We're going to play the B flat triad in the 6th position on frets 8, 7, and 6 on the D, G, and B strings. And we've got a C major triad right here at the 5th fret of the D, G, and B strings. We've got B flat and C triads here at the 6th and 8th position. On the top 3 strings, we could play something like this. There are 2 more triad shapes at the 10th and 12th positions on the top 3 strings. Here's B flat, here's C. We could use those 2 to make up a lick like this. And lastly, there's triad shapes at the 13th. There's B flat and 15th. There's C frets of that G, B, and E string. And while the triads alone, they sound a little stiff, if we blues it up, it's super easy to come up with a great sounding lick. So what's the point here? Triad pairs are a great way to get modal sounds without worrying about scale patterns. And if you spend a little time studying them, you could come up with dozens of great licks. On to concept number 4. Now, concept number 4 is using jazzy chromatics. I mentioned earlier that Robben Ford is considered to be the king of jazzy blues guitar. And one of the jazzy elements that shows up in our example lick is his use of chromatics. Now, he plays this passage. In the first part of that, we're taking part of a C major triad and moving it chromatically down to the B flat triad before resolving to C. Now, triads are built by stacking 2 sets of notes a third apart on top of one another. And of course, we can play just 2 of the notes, and we can go through the entire scale in thirds like this. And when we do that, there are some half-step gaps that we can fill by playing chromatically until we get to the next third interval. So we start at frets 15 and 17 on the E and B. We're going to slide that down chromatically to frets 13 and 15. Then we've got another little third shape here at frets 12 and 13 of the E and B. We're going to play that chromatically down to frets 10 and 11. And then we could play frets 8 and 10 and move that chromatically down to frets 6 and 8. Matter of fact, we could take that all the way down to frets 3 and 5, which is another C triad shape. So here's what we've got so far. So there's another great thing for you to practice, which would be finding these thirds on all the different string sets all the way up and down the fretboard, and of course across the fretboard also. And of course, once you get comfortable finding those thirds all over the fretboard, we want to start making up some licks. So let's take that third at the frets 15 and 17 of the E and B string. We could descend chromatically and then break off into a blues lick. Or we could ascend from frets 13 and 15 up to 15 and 17 and play something bluesy there. Remember, we're always trying to bring these concepts home with something bluesy. Just with this concept alone, if you were to explore all the places on the neck that you could play these little chromatic patterns and then make up 2 or 3 bluesy resolutions for each one, can you imagine how many cool new licks you would be able to create and have in your toolbox? Now let's move on to our last concept. Now concept number 5 is using the diminished scale to transition between chords. This is one of Robben's calling cards, and it seems like every player that hears him wants to understand what he's doing. In our example lick, Robben plays this to get from the C7 chord to the F7, or as we say, from the 1 to the 4. Without getting way off in the theory weeds, let's just say that some of the notes of the C half-hold diminished scale sit between the notes of C7 and F7 really nicely, and they can be used to transition from one chord to the other. And sometimes you'll hear a diminished 7 chord referred to as a passing chord for that reason. So if I play a C7 chord, and if I use a diminished chord or arpeggio, we would use C sharp diminished to transition from C to F. So I play C7, C sharp diminished, and then F. You can hear how there's some cool voice leading happening here. So if we can do it with chords, we can do it with single notes too. In the original lick, Robben played A sharp, C, and C sharp at frets 6, 8, and 9 on the E string, and then the F triad at the 5th fret. Something super cool about the diminished scale is that it's symmetrical, so anything you play with it can be moved up or down 3 frets, which is a minor third interval, and it's going to work perfectly. So what that allows us to do is move up and down the neck and find spots to transition easily to some lick over the F7 chord. So if we took our original lick, we've got F there at the 5th fret. We could move that little lick up 3 frets to frets 9, 11, and 12. And we've got an F triad at that 8th fret that we can go to. If we move the lick up to frets 12, 14, and 15, we've got an F triad right there at the 13th fret, or we've got F minor pentatonic. If we play the lick at frets 15, 17, and 18, we can either go down to fret 13, or we could go up to fret 17. We've got that F triad. So obviously, I would recommend that you learn the entire diminished scale all over the neck, of course, but for the sake of time, let's learn a diminished 7 arpeggio. There's a very usable diminished arpeggio shape on the E, B, and G strings. Remember, we've got to use C sharp when transitioning from C to F. So we're playing frets 9 and 6 on the high E, and then 8 and 9 on the B and G. So we could use that C sharp diminished arpeggio at the 9th fret, and I've got an F triad here at the 8th fret that we could play into. Now if I move that up 3 frets, we could transition to the F major or F minor pentatonic scale. If I move it up 3 frets again, so now I'd be up at the 15th fret with my pinky, and we've got an F triad right there at the 13th fret, or I could play F minor pentatonic. We could drop back down to the 9th fret, and there's a F triad at the 5th fret. that we could take advantage of. We could even double up on the diminished by descending through the arpeggio at the 9th fret, dropping down to the 3rd fret and ascending, and then taking advantage of that F triad at the 5th fret. Now check this out. We can also play a diminished arpeggio to get us from the 4 chord back to the 1. So we'll be going F7, F sharp diminished, and back to C7. And we get those great passing tones again. So let's start at the F major pattern, number 1 up at the fret 10. And then we've got an F sharp diminished arpeggio at fret 14. And then there's the C major triad right there at fret 12. It sounds fantastic, and again, there are so many possibilities all over the neck of the guitar. So there you have it. And as you can see, I wasn't exaggerating when I said this one Robben Ford lick is made up of great concepts that will allow you to make up blues licks basically until your creativity runs out. That's why I referred to it as a one-lick masterclass. Remember that learning licks is great, but learning the concepts that make a lick work, that's much more important, because then you can take those concepts and come up with your own stuff. Thanks for watching and supporting the channel. If you dig the video, give me a like and subscribe to the channel. We're putting out more great guitar stuff every week. Play and practice hard, have a lot of fun with this stuff, and never stop learning. See you next time.